Om apayantu mamangani vakpranaschakshu shrotramaത്ര balamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam mahabrahma nirakuryam mama brahma nirakaroda nirakaranamastva nirakaranam me astu tadatmani atmani upanishad vishad mai shantu te mai shantu. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. May our bodies experience great health. May our life force flow unimpeded. May our minds expand in their capacity to know Brahman. For the Upanishads, the non-dual scriptures of India declare that all existence is Brahman. Therefore, may we never deny Brahman. May Brahman never deny us. May there be no rejection of Brahman ever by us, we who are dedicated to the realization of the Atman within. May all divine qualities cited in the divine scriptures also reside within us. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti Resha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagadcha Akanda Rupa Stiti Reva Moksho Brahmadvitiye Shrutayaha Pramanam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It is the apt and final conclusion of the Vedanta that all is Brahman. Time, space, living beings in the world. Living in constant recognition of this fact is what is called enlightenment. Brahman is pure and perfect, and one without a second. And the revealed scriptures are the sure and certain proof of this fact. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Aravavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Welcome and thank you all for joining us, both live and live streaming today for, I think, what is the fourth class of our series called Shakta Advaita Vada. Before that, we finished a series of non-touch yoga, and that is now posted on the YouTube for everyone to look back on. And we are going to be posting these classes too when they are finished. Shakta Advaita Vada is a series of Divine Mother teachings, which we have been using this main chart for, to explore her territories, both outer and inner, but the most important ones in Vedanta, of course, are inner. The kingdoms of heaven lie within you. So in that case, we look to the internal mind and intellect and what it projects over the formless reality. That is, all form is a projection over formless reality. In Vedanta, it's called vivarta or adhyasa, or by other Sanskrit words that help us to understand that our essence is formless, and we actually prove that fact to ourselves 4 times. That is when we die from our bodies and go into a formless state. When we go into deep sleep, every night we go into a formless state. And when we have a very good non-dual meditation, we go into a formless state. And then there's what the seers call samadhi, or nirvana, or kaivalya, moksha, mukti. Those kinds of words in India pertain to a formless state of reality in which everything is empty, yes, shunyata, but not empty of essence. That's the mistake sometimes philosophies or movements of spirituality have made when they have tried to deny the existence of existence itself. That is, you can go on denying everything, but you can never deny the existence of the one who's doing the denying. So Vedanta calls that the self, a word that's sort of loaded in some circles, but doesn't mean the ego self. It simply needs to be explained. It's the all-pervasive self, which we just chanted about. It's also called in Buddhism pragyaparam, or Buddha nature. It's been called by different names in different religious traditions of the world from time out of mind. And beings, as we just chanted, are always about trying to realize that divine nature. It's not a matter of just hearsay, or it's not even a matter of morality and immorality. It's not a matter of ultimately of even doing a strong spiritual practice or having a strong meditation practice. It's a matter already at hand. And that's the Advaita Vedanta. You are always free. You have just dreaming yourself to be bound, is how Vivekananda would put it. And you're taking on these false superimpositions over the formless reality. You're accepting them as being real when you should be rejecting them and only coming to know that, as we just said, Vedanta Siddhanta Niruktiresha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagadsha, that all this is Brahman, but Brahman is not the form. Brahman is the essence upon which the form appears. If you keep that one rule of thumbs up, in mind, then you will definitely not run afoul of non-dual philosophy, and you'll be able to realize your true nature in this very life, as they say. So this fourth class in the series of Shakta Advaita Vada is just that. Vada means path, Advaita is non-duality. That is the kind of I and my Father are one type of thinking, or beyond thinking, if you really want to put it that way. And Shakta means the path of the Divine Mother of the universe, which in India is major path. Probably India is the only country where Mother has her own religion. But in India it goes beyond Mother having her own religion. She's the mother of all religions. And that's actually a name has been given to India for its dedication to religion and philosophy, the two wings of the bird, which help the soul fly, even here in the very weighty confines of body-mind mechanism. That is, the body is definitely heavy, burdened down by the five elements, but the mind also can become very heavy. That's not necessary. Even the body can become light if you pursue a regimen of health. That's why I just chanted Apayantu Mamangani Vak Pranas Chakshu Shotra Matra Balam Indri Cha Sarvani. It means Apayantu Mamangani Vak Pranas Chakshu. That's the prana there you're talking about, the life force. And all the elements of the body, seeing, Vak, and Shravana, hearing, and so forth, all of the five elements of the body are also can become very purified and very light, so that they see nothing but Brahman, hear nothing but Brahman, taste nothing but Brahman. All food gets offered into the fire of Brahman by Brahman. And so those are some of the very famous sayings in India that lead us toward the non-dual, even in the midst of the dual, or in the midst of variety. We keep that idea of unity first and foremost. That's the appeal of the Advaita Vedanta, which will have, according to Vivekananda, a 900-year rise, and since he has resurrected it here in 1893 at the Parliament of Religions. And so he said it will be the future religion of mankind. There's no doubt about that. And that's a powerful statement. Knowing Vivekananda as I do, to any degree, I'm not going to doubt that man. That man was superlative soul. Sri Ramakrishna called him a nitya siddha, that is, an ever-perfect soul. So he's a soul that's scarcely born on earth. Maybe once every 500 to 1,000 years you might see a soul like that born on earth. And it just takes a quick look at the last 1,000 years by, in his case, reading all the encyclopedias in a couple days when he came here to America, and had Shrutidara. Shrutidara means immediate memory. So they asked him questions about what he read in the encyclopedia, and he could answer them all. He's got this very beautiful memory that comes about, by the way, by reserving and conserving your energy, and by practicing satyam, truthfulness, and by practicing aparigraha, not non-giving, non-receiving of gifts, which isn't just, probably not a very popular thing to talk about here around Christmas. It's 10 days before Christmas, but nonetheless the idea is that you don't own anything. You can custodian it, as they say, but you don't become the agent of ownership around anything. You try and keep things simple and unostentatious in your life so that you're unburdened, because if you're giving and receiving gifts all the time, you could say even commerce, you're engaged in business all the time, then it takes your mind away from essential things of life. It's basically at the root of that teaching of non-gift giving, which sometimes stultifies people. Why did the ancient rishis not allow that? Because they knew it had the tendency to put your mind on the world and take it away from God, to put it in very simple terms. And the mind that thinks about God, thinks about seek thee first the kingdom of heaven, you see, and all else will be added unto thee. So they follow a dharmic course. Dharma means dharma first, then artha, wealth, then kama, desires, and then moksha, freedom. So it's the four fruits of life. I have a chart on it with me for this class. We'll probably get to it here because it appears right here, called the Purusharthas, at the base of the pillar. Now, as we have taken this chart for the last 3 weeks as our main chart, and we also studied it on retreat up the Columbia River Gorge a few months back in Oregon and Washington with a whole group of SRV devotees, your brothers and sisters in the northwest of the United States, gathered there, and about 20 or 25 of them, and we went through this chart pretty thoroughly. In Hawaii here, just in 3 short weeks, we've been able to cover Brahman, the non-dual reality. It's the word for God. You could also say Allah, and if you're a Muslim, or Almighty Father if you're a Christian, or Pragyaparam if you're a Buddhist, that is supreme intelligence. Any of those words in different religious traditions will stand in nicely for the non-dual reality, which is, as we said, beyond form. What does have form is Om. That is, its formless form. It is in the beginning, it was with God, and it was God. So all 3 of those things Christ told John about. We've studied that already, so I'm not going to go into it, but that was how, even 2,000 years ago, the word was very popular in the Middle East, what to speak of the Far East, thousands of years prior to that. In Buddha's time, 550 years before Christ, all the Buddhist mantras started with the word Om, many of them. So that's the word of the formless Brahman. And Hrim we looked at as the word of dynamic Shakti. When you approach contemporary Vedanta, sometimes we call it Neo-Vedanta, the kind of Vedanta that blends all these darshanas, the worship of Shiva, the worship of Mother, the worship of Krishna, the worship of Ganapati, the 6 darshanas, and the proofs, as we looked at last week in this chart, which I'm just showing that we can sort of use it as a springboard to go further. But we looked at all the 6 proofs in the different darshanas of India. That means Vedanta, Yoga, Samkhya, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, and other clear paths of seeing. That's what the word darshana means, clear paths of seeing. So we looked at Hrim because Hrim is the Divine Mother Bijam. That's the Bijam of dynamic reality. So if you are coming close to that level of Neo-Vedanta and you want to give it a contemporary reading, then you're going to have to understand that just because we say Brahman's formless doesn't mean that form doesn't have its play. And in fact, that's the very good point. It has its play. That's called Leela. It shouldn't have its unnecessary periods of suffering and misery. That's called Maya. So Maya, Leela, and Brahman are three things that form a very powerful triputi, triple teaching. There are many triple teachings in this tradition. Time, space, and causation. Those are right here. We'll look at those later. That's really a definition for Maya. But if you're talking about Maya, Leela, and Brahman, then you're talking about three different levels of consciousness. Consciousness that has gotten itself bound, consciousness that is at sport, and consciousness that's formless and is not moving. Sort of like the difference between the waves on the ocean out there being tossed here and there. That's Maya. Oh, hundreds and thousands of them. You can't even count them all. And they're always in disarray and chaos, you see, with some sort of order behind them, but nevertheless all bouncing around. And then Leela, when they all get together into one big wave, you see, it's like a sport of an avatar, a sport of a great being, like Jesus or Buddha or Krishna or Ramakrishna. When they appear on earth, it's like play, sportive play. They show you how to transcend suffering and how to live a divine life or a dharmic life, and keep the mind balanced amidst all of this potential fray, vagaries and vicissitudes, they say, that are out there. But then when you talk about Brahman, you're entering the ocean at the depths. So ocean at the surface, the waves are tossed. Ocean as one wave, or ocean at the depths. When you get to the ocean's depths, you're talking about Brahman, no movement, all homogeneous, indivisible, static, peaceful, quiet. See, then you're in that formless state, like Christ under the tree and Buddha under the bo tree. In that case, then, those words become very important to you. You know that Om is humming in the formless nature of Brahman, but when it begins to want to be active, Hrim, bijams like that, the Divine Mother will appear, and she'll stir up this ocean of formlessness and bring form out of it. It's divine play in her case. But she doesn't intend for you to fall into delusion around play and become bound and suffer, because she places in you that Atman. You see, that divine nature is there inside of every being, from the most enlightened to the evil. The Atman is there in quantity and in quality equally. But some have realized it, some haven't. My teacher has said, and those realizations go in degrees, by the way. He used to say, when consciousness comes and identifies with water, then it will become a fish. When it comes down and identifies only with the sense of smell and hearing, then it'll become a dog. If it comes down and identifies with brutish undertakings and pastimes, then it becomes a evil human being, it's an evil-minded human being. If it comes down and identifies with the intellect, it becomes a scholar or a pundit, intellectual. But then it can come down and identify only with Atman and become a seer or a sage or a saint or a savior. So it's the same one homogeneous reality in everyone. That's why we call it formless. But it gets realized in different mechanisms in different ways. Another way he used to put it is consciousness in plants is dreaming. Oh, you'd start this way. Consciousness in rocks is sleeping. Consciousness in plants is dreaming. Consciousness in animals is half awake. Consciousness in human beings is awake. But consciousness in the seer is fully awake and enlightened. That kundalini power has come up the spine, and as I was just saying earlier, has been stored up and is being used for benign purposes all around the world. Therefore, those great souls that we call avatars or divine incarnations are the most economic, and they're also the most effective. Their name lasts the longest, you might have noticed. 2,000, 2,500 years in the case of Christ and Buddha, and thousands of years in the case of other great souls in India like Vashishta or others. So this word, Hrim, is very important, and we looked at that in a series of charts. Now we also looked at moksha and kaivalya. Moksha means that in liberation, or that freedom that's always at hand. It can't be gained, it's already you. It's like synonymous with Atman. And you'll have to, again, realize its immediacy, its presence all the time. If you're conscious of it, then it exists. If you're not conscious of it, it's as if it doesn't exist. So you have to become conscious of it and not pull it down to the world of name and form and time and space, but actually raise yourself up above name and form and time and space and realize it in a non-dual condition of mind. Kaivalya is the penultimate state just before you reach moksha. It means basically, I want a divorce from nature. I want to separate from form. It's the last thing, it's the last move the soul will make before it gets that samadhi or nirvana. That's why the wilderness, on the mountaintop, in the forest, under the bo tree, for some 40 days, these great souls like Moses, Muhammad, Buddha, and Christ spent a long time in solitude and went into a non-dual state. So they came to a place where they saw nature as the hub of creation, of form. And they said, I see, in order to get nirvana, I'm going to have to divorce nature. I'm going to have to transcend form, because my true nature is formless. So they made their final bid, their final storming of the last precipice to the castle gate of non-duality, you see. And they rushed it and had their moments of samadhi or nirvana. And then they came back to form to tell us about. See? So basically that's again Brahman, Leela, and then those beings who are caught in Maya. It's a very nice triple division of consciousness, play of consciousness. So those two are at the top of both pillars. We went and looked at Nirvikalpa and Savikalpa samadhis. Nirvikalpa is that high state where name, form, time, space, and so forth, nama, rupa, desha, kala, nimitta, maya, all disappears, and you're having that vision of light. You not only see the light, you become the light. You are the light. I am the light of the worlds, as Christ said. When you have that experience, you're all permeated with that light of consciousness. That's consciousness with a capital C, by the way. It's transcendent of the mind with its lower C, consciousness. So that's Nirvikalpa. But Savikalpa is when you have high knowledge samadhis, or you have bliss samadhis, or you have ripe ego samadhis, because form still persists in those. So you still keep a little semblance of form, and it brings you back. So sort of like coming back out of deep sleep to dreaming. In dreaming, forms are wispy, you see, and they come and go. Deep sleep, they're gone. So sort of a way in which consciousness moves. Your consciousness moves out of form into sort of transparent form, and then into formlessness and back again. So the samadhis are gradated like that. And in fact, in yoga, I put in parens asampragyata and sampragyata. Nirvikalpa and Savikalpa is the names for them in Vedanta, but those same samadhis are called seedless and seeded. Asampragyata and sampragyata in yoga. And in yoga, they're delineated a little bit more fully. There are four levels of seated samadhi, and then just one level of unseated samadhi. So we looked at samadhi from both sides then, form and formlessness, and studied that in terms of how one gets into Kaivalya, penultimate samadhi, and then one gets absolute moksha. And as Buddha said, have no hope for me, forevermore for the worlds. I'm gone, and I'm gone forever. I'm going to nirvana, that's it. You wrap up form like a skin, like you take the sky and wrap it up. See, you just take form and you just wrap it up into a ball and toss it, and you're in this sky of open awareness, see, beyond all religion, the open space beyond all religion. And you're having the actual experience yourself of oneness. Nirguna in Saguna is another way of saying that, but Nirguna, remember, is without attributes, without gunas, and Saguna is with gunas. That is, you won't find this mind going from laziness to restlessness to balance in Nirguna Brahman. The mind becomes non-dual and gives up those modes of consciousness. But in Saguna, you'll find that happening. The gunas are still present. The mind sometimes feels the dark night of the soul, for instance, even a great soul. Yeah. And then sometimes it goes into activity, and then sometimes it goes into absolute balance and feels peace of mind. And then those other gunas will come back again. So you're talking about cycles going in gunas. The three gunas are a very valuable teaching, particular to Vedanta. We've studied them many times, and we looked at them already in our class. So nirguna, saguna, these are the two pillars on either side of Mother, where she takes her seat in between them. Now, what else did we look at? Last week, we looked at Ashtaka and Nashtaka. Ashtaka means orthodox philosophy in India. Yoga, Vedanta, Samkhya, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, and Purva Mimamsa are the 6 orthodox philosophies called darshanas. Darshana means a way to clearly see. So if you take up one of these, yoga, or if you take up Vedanta, or you take up Samkhya, these paths will pave the way, will open this third eye and pave the way to actually seeing the truth. And you'll want to check out the pramanas. That's why I left this up. 6 proofs of reality in Advaita Vedanta. We looked at them all, right? Artapati, Upamana, Anupalabdhi, Shabda, Pratyaksha, and Anumana are 6 proofs of the existence of reality. Just to remind your mind, if I see smoke on that mountain, then I have to infer there's fire there, right? So if you see the smoke of form, then you have a creation, then you have to infer there's a creator somewhere. Wouldn't make sense otherwise. So that's one very simple way of proving the existence of reality yourself, because you can't see reality with these eyes or hear it with these ears. When you're hearing Om, you're not hearing anything that the human ear audibly on the physical level can possibly understand. You'll hear Om when you fall to sleep tonight if you keep your consciousness. Just before formlessness takes over form and you drop your senses and you take up 6 subtle senses and dream, 5 subtle senses and dream, then you will hear the humming of creation increase manyfold. And as soon as you wake up, you'll hear just the tail end of that humming of creation go away. Sometimes when you're in a wide awake state in the body, in the waking state, you can hear Om, or you can see the light right here. I saw that last night, in fact. Third eye is a beautiful thing if you ever get a glimpse of it. It's mentioned in 7 different religious traditions of the world, the third eye. I looked it up. I found references. I have a chart on it. I have a chart on everything, by the way, those of you who are new. I like to chart the divine territories as much as possible, so we have something to see as well as something to hear, because those are 2 very important senses for us. So Ashtaka is the orthodox. Now Nastika, there's no rub on Nastika for being non-orthodox. Buddhism is a Nastika, and Jainism is Nastika, and so forth. These are traditions in India that don't necessarily go to the Vedas for their absolute authority. That's basically the difference between Nastika and Astika. So some of the great beings like Lord Buddha, born at a time when the Vedas were actually being misrepresented and corrupted. So he didn't teach the Vedas, he taught the 4 Noble Truths, if you remember. First being, there is suffering. So he's been accused of being not only atheist but also quite pessimistic. Your first system's based on there is suffering. So he's giving you a wake-up call but you have to go on to the 2nd Noble Truth. It means there's a cause for your suffering. And the 3rd Noble Truth, there's a way out of your suffering. And the 4th Noble Truth is the 8-fold path, Ashtangika Marga, by which you can get yourself out of suffering. An actual practice you can do that puts you in charge to get yourself out of suffering. And must probably been 600-700 years later that the father of yoga put together the yoga system with an 8-limbed yoga. So 8 Noble Truths, 8-limbed yoga, some 600, 700, 800 years apart. You see, these seers are thinking all the time in the same way, especially the ones from India. They're thinking of divine reality. They're thinking of your eternal perfection, not your original sin. They don't believe in original sin. They're thinking of the eternal bliss of the soul, not eternal damnation. of the ego-mind complex that gets itself into an imagined hell and takes itself into a projected heaven. See, all in the mind. All worlds are in the mind. So those kinds of teachings come out of looking at Astika and Astika, because those have been the subjects which the seers who founded them, Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Vedavyas, Patanjali, these are the founders of some of these 6 orthodox systems. Lord Buddha and the Tirthankaras of the Jain religion, Mahavir being the most recent, founded those traditions. And they go back hundreds and thousands of years. That is, they're eternal, they're timeless. But historically speaking, in the river of time that we're inhabiting right now, where everything is slowed down to almost a snail's pace, as fast as you think it seems, with atomic particles vibrating at a billionth of a second, it still seems like when the senses are focused in this river of time, everything is going very gradually and very slowly. So you look back 10,000 years BC and you begin to see some of these great teachings present in India along the Indus River. That's why they called them Hindus, because they lived along the Indus River in that early time, and were already engaged in nonviolence as a way of life. Attila the Hun, Napoleon, the English, the Romans, they all tried to get into India, but India didn't close its borders and say, you can't have what we have. Here, take 24 varieties of mango. You can have them. We open up our borders. You can come in and take what you want. And so it wasn't any fun to conquer them. So India stayed rather unconquered. English only lasted, a few years, till a little brown man in a loincloth kicked them out. See, not with weapons, with resist not evil. That's how he did it. So these Astika and Astika systems and their proofs is where we ended up with in last class. So this has just been, on the 4th class, a run-through of all of those things that we've covered on this chart. I think I've covered all of them. Now, there are many others here to cover, and this is going to be the end of Shakta Advaita Vada 1. We're going to take a break next Sunday at Christmas, and the following Sunday come back with Shakta Advaita Vada 2, and we'll take most of the rest of this. So today I have for you the next level of the pillar here. We've taken everything around it, so we're going to go to the middle of the whole image pretty soon, but let's take Prakasha, Vikshepa, and Avarana Shakti, because they've already been mentioned several times. Here's a chart I've created for it. I already mentioned the 3 gunas, that is laziness of mind, or lassitudinousness, slothfulness, however you want to call it, and then frenetic activity, the running of the wheels of the mind and getting nowhere faster, and then balance that comes to the mind. Those are called tamas, rajas, and sattva. And those are those 3 gunas we've talked about. Well, you can see them aligned here with the 3 types of Shakti, Maya Shakti they're called. Avarana aligns with tamas, and it means covering power. That's the first here at the bottom, Avarana Shakti. It covers the truth, so that you're going to have to dig behind and the appearance of things, and go beyond time and space and causation, and as I said, beyond form, in order to know the truth, so that the truth can set you free. So this is done by every great Sherlock Holmes of the spiritual world. When the game is afoot, that means Maya and Leela, then they want to find themselves through that, penetrate through that Maya, so they're going to have to become aware that Maya exists in 3 levels. Avarana Shakti, Vikshepa Shakti, and Prakasha Shakti. Now, you hear teachings about Avarana and Vikshepa quite a lot. Avarana is covering power. This Ramakrishna used to do this to his disciples. Now you see me, now you don't. So he would just pick up something, and a cloth or something, and he says, that's Avarana Shakti. It's the simplest way that I can illustrate it to you. Form covers formlessness, or non-essence covers essence. And so people began to take the non-essence to be real forms. See? And they forget completely about the formless reality, and they begin to misjudge it and criticize it or outright forget it. So Avarana Shakti needs to be simply pulled away, you see. If that's happening, then you just have to pull it away. One of the best examples is Sri Ramakrishna was at the lake called a tank in India, and there it is, covered with this sort of green hyacinth plant. It's covering the whole lake. So he says to his companion, "Watch this," and he reaches down and grabs one strand of that hyacinth plant and pulls it, and the whole plant, all the way across the quarter mile of that tank, moves towards him. And then he turns back to his companion and says, "Just like that, everything's connected under the surface." Now that veil that's covering the truth of knowing that everything's connected under the surface is Avarana Shakti. As a philosophical principle, that's what you call it, Avarana Shakti. See here? It veils the mind on individual, collective, and cosmic levels. So you don't know you have three bodies. You think you have one. But you have a dream body tonight, and you have a deep sleep body. Your deep sleep body gets very formless, and you see the light in deep sleep body, but you don't remember it when you wake up. Most people, my teacher used to say, a fool goes into deep sleep and wakes up a fool. But a seer goes into deep sleep and knows what's there and wakes up a seer. So to be able to see your deep sleep body is going to demand that you penetrate through Avarana Shakti. Another story, Sri Ramakrishna was at another lake. There was a green scum there. He reached his hands in and pushed it, and he could see himself perfectly in the clear waters. And as he watched his reflection, the green scum just came dancing back. So his teaching was, Avarana Shakti is not like, say, a sentient evil, like a devil or something. It's not something that covers things up and then laughs at you and makes you suffer, tortures you. It's a natural covering power we're talking about. Form naturally covers formlessness. But 99% of living beings on earth do not make that effort to push that green scum of Maya away so that they can see their true nature. They're content to live under the auspice of covering power. And those other few percent, like Heraclitus said once, out of 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there. They're evil. And a percentage of the rest, they're not making any effort. They're not fighting the battle. They're just kind of falling under the press of name and form, time and space, the five elements, suffering, misery, karma, samskaras of the mind, darkness, Avarana Shakti. And they're content to live there in darkness. But those few great souls, 9 of them fight the battle and one's the exemplar, you see. So that's 100 men Heraclitus was talking about. 10 shouldn't even be there. It means, let's get thee behind me, you see. You're making a muck out of form, out of life in form. But what we want is to see that one great being who is showing us how to live in form, and the 9 that are fighting the battle. Those 10 we're very interested in. We must become like them. Like the 16 apostles of Ramakrishna, or the 12 apostles of Christ, or the Noble Eight of Buddha. Every great soul like that had this antaranga, inner circle, around them. So those were the beings that were seeing the truth face to face in form, getting to the Father through the Son, and knowing the truth and being set free. See? So this is how Indian philosophy would put it to you. It's not a sentient devil that's in your way, or some evil angel. And it's not some benign angel that's going to help you get out. It's all up to you. You just have to know that there's a natural covering power here, Avarana Shakti, and you have to stick your hands out and wipe it away. That means you must make an effort. Nobody's going to do that for you. You can pray to God for hundreds and thousands of lifetimes. God doesn't have ears. If Christ or Buddha comes to earth, then God has ears. And maybe they can help you. But how often does that happen? How often are you born on the same lifetime with a great soul like that? And if you were, would you recognize a great soul like that? Don't they get popular hundreds of years later? You know, you look at a soul like that and you can't believe them, you see. Because your parents haven't raised you in the Dharma. You see, you haven't been taught about Divine Mother wisdom. You've been taught morality and immorality if you're lucky. And if you're not lucky, you've been taught worldliness, Maya. They're trying to make you comfortable in the world. But every saying Christ ever told us was about birds have nests and foxes have holes, but you don't have any place to lay your head here. Why are you trying to get comfortable in Maya? Can't do it. And that's why. See? So it will cover your mind on individual, collective, and cosmic levels. Your three bodies will not be clear to you. You'll only have one, and that one will be scared to death of death. Your physical body, with its brain, will be scared to death of death. And that's not a way to live. Because death is an illusion. Outright illusion. You don't die. Why? Because you were never born. Can you create a soul? That's ridiculous. A soul is. You can't create a soul out of dust, matter, thought, or anything else. It's always present. The soul is one and indivisible. It's eternal. Read their lips. You see, read their scriptures. These are agreed upon by the great seers of different religious traditions of the world, that the soul is eternal. That means without beginning, middle, and end, by the way, in any good dictionary. So, don't let it veil you, you see, and it works in conjunction with this Shakti. Now, the second Shakti is Vikshepa, means distorting power. So there's covering power where the truth gets completely covered and you don't know anything. Then there's a light you see, and then it gets distorted by some darkness, and that's almost worse. That is because you're beginning to misread the truth. That is, you get some energy called rajas, activity, and then all of a sudden you consider yourself an expert at what reality is, and you begin to misrepresent it. You begin to interpolate scripture, or you begin to give advice out long before you've even taken the first step on the spiritual path. So you must get clear about this, the distorting power that also exists, you see. And so it works in conjunction with covering power. It distorts the mind on individual, collective, and cosmic levels. It's related to the guna of rajas, and it works in conjunction with avarana and prakasha shakti. Here is where we finally get a little bit of light coming in, because the third Maya Shakti is called Prakasha Shakti. Prakasha Shakti means revelatory power. Vikshepa Shakti means distorting power. Avarana Shakti means veiling power. So now, who are you going to call? You want to call Prakasha Shakti. See the figure here? Just covering his eyes, you see? Maya is like that. It covers your eyes. But Prakasha Shakti tries to pull that away, those hands away, so you can see where you're going. It's called revelatory power. It's not moksha yet. See, it's not absolute freedom, but it is a power in Maya that is going to help you make progress, spiritually speaking, so that you can uncover the truth. It's like higher wisdom as compared to secular knowledge, intellectual knowledge, or outright distorted knowledge, which would be the case of Vikshepa Shakti. So you're having this visitation by the Prakasha Shakti. In other words, your eye is coming single, and you still know the truth, right? So your eye gets to single instead of being two-eyed or even cross-eyed. Now you're getting a single eye, you see. And that lasts as consciousness comes to that chakra, heart chakra, throat chakra, third eye chakra. When consciousness visits there, all of a sudden it gets a very clear glimpse of who it is and what it's not. In order to know who you are, you have to know what you're not. So who and what are a very important distinction. Who means a living, sentient, divine consciousness in you. What means name, form, nature, time, space, elements like that. 5 elements like earth, air, fire, water, and ether, and how they connect to your smelling, tasting, seeing, hearing, touching, and hearing. See, those 5 elements and the 5 senses have a connection. but most of people are leaving them disconnected. You don't know that the 5 elements came out of the mind because you haven't made the connection with the senses with the elements yet. That you need water to taste, you need earth to smell, you need fire to see, right? You need air to touch, and you need to connect this hearing with the ether. See, you hear because of the ether. And there are 5 other kinds of ethers, not just physical ether. They teach their children that in India. That's why the scriptures have come down to us uninterpolated for so long, for thousands of years, because their children found out about 5 different ethers. They didn't stop at physical ether with vibrating particles that are changing at a billionth of a second. Call that empty, or building your house on sand. They didn't stop at the physical ether. They went on to the prana ether. Man does not live by bread alone. So Christ knew about a different level of reality called prana. And then you get into the mental ether and the intellectual ether. You're getting into some very fine akashas. The word is akasha. Loka is another world. See? We'll look at the akashas and lokas, because there's the lokas there, these flowers that are strewn around her feet. So they're like lokas, or worlds, where beings of different design people those worlds all the time. So you have ancestor world inside of you, you have worlds of angels and celestials, you have worlds of gods and goddesses. You ever wondered why people are so interested in deities? Because that's a very subtle stratum of their own consciousness. Or why people are obsessed with their ancestors? Because that's also a subtle strata of their consciousness. Sometimes whole religions worship ancestors. Shintoism, for instance. Even Hinduism has a whole cross-section that are worshiping the ancestors. And it's not a very high worship. Especially if it takes you over and you forget that there are other lokas inside of you that you should be worshiping, like these deities. You could even, like in Tibetan Buddhism, worship wrathful deities, and that'll be good for you. Choose a wrathful deity, because a wrathful deity will take you to task. And besides, you're going to see some when you die. Most people will see wrathful deities. That's called hell. But there is no hell. There's just this being coming to challenge you, coming to test you. My teacher was a demon. He came up to you and scolded you, and you'd smile at him, and he'd say, "Okay, good." He was testing you all the time, seeing if you were strong, if you could stand up to a scolding. He'd do away with 3 or 4 lifetimes of karmas in one of his scoldings. When you realized that, then you stood there and took it. Arrogant Americans, he'd say. See? Arrogant Americans, with their money and power, their atomic bomb, see? Splitting the curtain, splitting the atom, and releasing power for evil. Sri Ramakrishna split the curtain of Maya and brought forth the power for good for all of you. And you're not even partaking of it, he would say. So this Maya needs to be penetrated. You see, you cannot let it abide, seep into the cracks of your thinking consciousness, or sleeping consciousness, or waking consciousness. You have to become resistant to that. You have to stand up and realize the infinite. And you cannot realize the infinite through the finite. He used to say that all the time too. You cannot realize the infinite through the finite. You're going to have to put the finite away. Vivekananda said that nicely. He said it once. The only way to prove to yourself that you're not matter is to leave matter alone. Can you do that? I was talking this morning in our live streaming satsang. A question came in about that, about making money and so forth. I said, money is beneath you. See, why do you bother so much about it? Commerce is paltry. You see, let it go on. But seek thee first the kingdom of heaven. Put your mind on higher things, and everything will come running to you, including wealth. As soon as you give up your desire for it, that's when it comes, isn't it? Isn't that what happens in the life? You have a strong desire for it, and you're pursuing it, and you never get it. Always just at the end of that, your reach, you see. Oh, I give up. All of a sudden, you won the lottery or something, you see. So, you're dictating. Human mind is dictating the worlds. The world of the ancestors is connected to the human mind. The worlds of the angels is connected to the human mind. The worlds of the gods and goddesses connected to the human mind. These are the heavens within you. Christ knew about them. He saw them in meditation. Buddha knew about them, and he told us how to get out of them. He didn't want to go on rounds, cycles with his ancestors. He wanted to find souls like this, you see, who get together in a spiritual family because there's no karma there. In your ancestors, you've got blood karma. Your blood family is karma, but your spiritual family is non-karma. See, you can get free in a group like this. It's called a sangha. That is, it's called sangha. See, a sangha, called a sangha. A sangha means no groups anymore. Put an A in front of any Sanskrit words. You have to be careful with English when you say this and that. But a sangha would be going into the wilderness on your own. See, well, I don't need sanghas anymore. I've been there, done that. Now I'm going to go sit under a tree for a while and realize the truth. I'm going to realize I have 3 bodies. And I'm going to see the ancestors inside of me, salute them and move on. I'm going to encounter the gods and goddesses and say, you all exist in me. I'm greater than you. I have Brahman in me. I have Atman in me. You're just lording over a bunch of souls in some world. I can move on. See? The human being is the greatest of all beings in my tradition. There's nothing higher than the human being because of its potential to realize its true nature. You won't see the ancestors and the gods and goddesses and the celestials trying to realize their true nature. They're too busy. And busy is what? Vikshepa Shakti, isn't it? They're busy with restlessness. They're busy with lording over worlds, dominating over souls. That's the business that goes on there. But what about this breadth of heights, this freedom that the great souls like Vivekananda have come and explained to you? See, you must rise to that. So the only proof to you being not matter is to leave matter alone. So if you can do it for an hour, it's called meditation. Maybe do it for a week. I renounce everything. Or maybe go to a monastery for a while. See? Or a nunnery. Get thee to a nunnery. Go into seclusion. Give everything up. See what happens to the mind. Might be hard at first, depending on how obsessed or attached you are, but when those obsessions and attachments begin to dissolve, see, the green scum gets pushed away. The hyacinth plant gets moved. You see, then all of a sudden you have revelation. That's what we're talking about here. Prakasha Shakti clarifies the mind by revealing the actual nature of things. If I look at a thing, you see, say tree, I look at a tree out there, then what I'm seeing is the Maya tree. It's called the appearance tree. But the real tree is what? Vibrating particles. That's what at least quantum physics has been kind enough to reveal, although I don't think they've made the right conclusion yet, that you have to give it up. But there is the vibrating tree, it's the real tree. See, the vibration is more real than the appearance of the thing itself. So there must be a power of solidity and a power of liquidity and a power of radiance and so forth that are in my senses that are congealing objects, so that my senses slow down to such a rate of vibration that I can see solidity, I can see solid things. They're focused there. Therefore, Mundaka Upanishad says, the senses are defective by nature because they're outgoing. Get a hold of your inner senses and see what's within. Upanishad. Great seers, ancient rishis of India. They didn't write them down at first for the longest time. You see, not till Vedavyas came along, were they beginning to be systematized and written down, but for the longest time you just heard this, and your child heard this, and your student heard this, and they heard it, and then they had the revelation, you see. You have to hear it first, and then you have to contemplate it for a while, and then it gets itself revealed to you, and you become a seer. You get illumined. You get yourself free. That's the only reason that any good teacher speaks to you about truth, is he wants you free. There are 4 qualifications to a guru. The first is avrijjana, and the second is akamahata. That means, kamahata means, I have no desire for you other than you get enlightened. When I went around the West in my 20s and 30s and 40s, touring with Jaima music, playing at different ashrams and for different religious institutions and gurus, I saw that most of them didn't care if their students got free. They just wanted money. Religion had come over in the form of Hindu materialism, just like Christian materialism, and they all wanted money and power. See? But I found a few souls in there who were behind the scenes called Dharma teachers. They wanted you to get free. They wanted you to get these teachings. They didn't have any desire for you whatsoever, except that you get free. It's called akamahata. It's the first qualification for a teacher, according to Shankara, one of the greatest Advaitins who ever lived. That's the teaching we should have been given. You see, Americans who are so not only arrogant but gullible. What is the power of obscuration if it isn't taking a charlatan for a true teacher? Isn't it? It's the covering power in a human being, you see. And distorting power is, taking a teacher who is giving you a mixture of half-truths and partial truths, leading you on, you see, covering your eyes with one hand and leading you on with another in whatever direction they care. But when you get a teacher that's availed of the Prakasha Shakti, it's all revelation. It's a revelation time, see. And thine eye, being single, shall know the truth. Now, they're also going to practice avrijjana and stotriya. They're going to give you the essence of the scriptures, and they're going to live a pure and unostentatious lifestyle. And then they must be a knower of Brahman, Brahmavid. Those are the 4 qualifications of a good teacher. I should have put them on here. They might be here somewhere, hidden in one of her other facets. So, with that, then you, as I found my teacher, I could bow at his feet. I had no qualms about bowing at his feet and touching them, taking the dust of his feet, they call in India, because I knew that was, he had the 4 qualifications. I was in good hands. So Prakasha Shakti related to the guna of sattva. So sattva is balance. Sattva makes you feel good. Sattva is your personal bliss. If you can access your own personal bliss, then you're a happy person, you see. And hopefully contentment will follow happiness, and then peace will follow contentment. And from peace you'll get bliss. See, it's gradated like anything else. Happiness is subject to sorrow, so that's a round that you might want to stay out of. So in order to do that, you're going to have to get some contentment. Contentment is one of these. You see, sadhana chatushtaya sampat, shat sampat, is the 4 treasures and the 6 jewels. That's what we'll show you next, or soon. 4 treasures and the 6 jewels. See, that's one of the great Vedantic teachings. And amongst the 6 jewels you have contentment, you see. You reach a state of contentment. That's higher than happiness. You could say, yes, contentment also can result in malcontent, you see, lack of contentment. But usually it's not so much the case if you are following a trajectory. If you're following a philosophical path, then each one of these pillars gets supported and bolstered up by other great qualities around it. Next to contentment is forbearance. See, tutiksha it's called. So if you can forbear things, nothing can make you malcontent. You just forbear, that's all. You don't get oppressed when a bad thing happens. You don't get elated when a good thing happens. It's called balance. Oh, that's sattva, you see. It's related to the guna of sattva that leads beyond it as well. So balance is good, but you want non-dual awareness. Advaita Vedanta, Samadhi, Moksha, Satori in Zen. Mumukshutvam, a desire for truth, alone. Those kinds of things is what will satisfy the soul forever. Everything else will satisfy it only for a little time, and then become old. So Prakasha Shakti also exposes truth in association with Adhyaropa and Apavada, and that's where we segue to a chart like the 6 jewels and 4 treasures. But first let's finish this off. So let's read this quote at the top of this chart. Which says, Maya is an insentient force that, though invested with inherent powers of obscuration and distortion, nevertheless is present to drive beings towards remembrance and enlightenment. The Tantric adepts state that she covers our eyes with one hand, but leads us towards freedom with the other. This directive power is called Prakasha Shakti. Prakasha is the revelatory light. Prakashaka is its revealer, and Prakashya is the thing revealed. So it's a triple movement there again. You're looking on as the witness, and then there's the power of witnessing, and then there's the thing being witnessed, which in this case would be your consciousness. The people watching right now, probably one of them asked me a question once, or actually told me a statement once. He said, when you said something in one of your classes once that I should study my own consciousness, I said that was a revelation to me. Bingo, Prakasha Shakti was working, you see, the revelatory power. And that moment when I said that, he was visited by the Prakasha Shakti, see, and she revealed to him that actually he can not only stand back and watch all phenomena go by, that's called being the witness of things, but that was actually a power that was inside him that he can utilize, and he had never known that before. What happens all of a sudden when a person becomes hands-on with their own consciousness? They could actually make spiritual growth under their own auspice. See, that's what we like to see. But is that my own doing? Is that my ego that made that happen, or was it the Prakasha Shakti who came and revealed herself to me? See, then maybe I should start worshiping her so she'll reveal everything to me. So you put her image on an altar and you begin offering flowers and incense, you see. And you begin doing bhakti. You bring bhakti and devotion into the quotient. And she reveals more and more wisdom to you. Till bhakti and wisdom are the same thing to you. Wisdom and devotion. 2 wings of the bird. So, beautiful quote there. And that pretty much delivers what I wanted to say about these 3 Maya Shaktis. So remember, there's a covering power, there's a distorting power, and there's a revelatory power in everything. And they're insentient. It's not like their operator could be sentient, but that operator is you. Kingdoms of heaven are within you. God is within you. Divine Mother is within you, you see. That's sentiency, that's consciousness, that's awareness, that's timeless, deathless awareness. So when you avail yourself of that, then this revelatory power will be yours all the time. Everything that comes forward to you that's a mystery will be cracked open on the spot, and you'll see the essence. Like looking at a tree and saying, just an appearance. But there's the atomic particle tree, that's the real tree. But guess what? There's a 3rd level to the tree. It's called the Buddha nature tree. We would call it the Atman tree in Vedanta. That is, its essence. That's what gives it its treeness. It's what gives gold its goldness. It's what gives man its manliness. Woman is woman, its womanliness, you see. That's the essence in everything. So there you have it. Prakasha Shakti will reveal to yourself the 3rd level of knowledge. The first 2 levels of knowledge, most people never even get to the 2nd. It takes a quantum physicist to get there. But the quantum physicist hasn't reached yet the revelatory power of the essence of a thing, why it exists, or that it is existence itself. Why question it? See, once you've seen it, you've seen everything leading to it. In fact, you may get into a very powerful revelation about meditation between existence and non-existence, or between form and formlessness, or how about bondage and liberation? I feel bound, my true nature is free, moksha. And there's even a word for it. Many words for it. If there's a word for it, then it exists. So I need to find it. In order to find it, these have to go. Covering power, distorting power, have to go. This has to be ripped away, this has to be smoothed out. And so in the mind, I've explained how they can exist in nature in the form of a tree, but the real efficacy to this teaching is to go into the mind and see what is being obscured there. The Dharma, the teachings, the truth, all being obscured there by your mind, and rip off that covering power. And then see what is being distorted. You can tell what's being distorted by its effects, can't you? If you're thinking in a distorted way, then you get sick in some way, or some negative repercussion comes from your action, you see. So, there's still distortion there. I must smooth that out so that the effect becomes balanced. Sattva, prakasha. So here's some ways in which to look at a very powerful teaching on next to one of the pillars of Mother. That is, the three Maya Shaktis are another precious teaching in Vedanta. There are even songs you can sing about it. We sing this one, for instance. Sarva Jnana Shakti Mahakundalini Jivatma Paramatma Dharini Shri Devi Rudrani Kalaratri Devi Avidya Vidya Devi Maheshani Shri Yogamai Chit Shakti Devi Jaya Vijaya Devi Sasundari Shri Mantra Shakti Mata Deva Devi Dasa Tattva Devi Shakti Darshini. Sanskrit verses, different names of the Divine Mother as she reveals. O progenitress of the all-penetrating wisdom who flows imperceptibly as subtle spiritual current within the subtle body. That's revelatory power. You get a hold of that Kundalini power, and then that's going to be revelatory power accented many times over. You hold all souls and absolute reality within you. Though often terrible to behold, like one of those wrathful deities, O great lady, appearing as the black night of the incomprehensible void, that's Kalaratri, you hold knowledge and ignorance in abeyance and loose them for your purposes. So that would be holding knowledge in abeyance would be under the auspice of Avarana and Vikshepa Shakti, but releasing them for your purposes would be Prakasha Shakti. She'll do that just at the right moment, called auspicious timing. That's on here too. O all-attracting presence, O all-alluring and puissant form, you animate the five elements and exude sublime intelligence as well, being ever victorious over all beings. O goddess of all gods, who embodies as comprehension in all great statements, Ashtaka, Nashtaka, Pramana, she is the great words, Om and Hring. She embodies as the wisdom of those words. She's invisible like that, the wisdom mother, the Vak Devi, the goddess of the word. That's why a word is so pregnant, so important. What to speak of power words, any word is important. You just have to take it apart into its particles. Wisdom particles. You operate all cosmic principles and grant communion with divine nature. So she will point you to your true divine nature called Atman, Buddha nature, soul, however you say it in your tradition. That's Prakasha Shakti. So with that little musical conclusion, we will then go on and see some of the other things on her beautiful territories here. I think we were just talking about it. It's a quick study, so before we take the jewels, let's take these Purusharthas. Purushartha, at the base of the pillar here, you see, because it was one of the earliest of mother teachings, called the Four Fruits of Life. Now, those are called Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So you see them listed there. This is always at the beginning, and this is always at the end. These two sometimes can come in any order, depending on the soul's karma. But you must have Dharma first. So I remember being with my teacher once, and somebody was talking about the 4 fruits of life, Purusharthas, that Mother grants to all beings. And that person said to my teacher, yes, there's Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. And my teacher stood up and said, no, that's wrong. You never put Dharma after Artha and Kama. You don't put righteousness and truth after desire and wealth. This has to come first. Seek thee first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added unto thee. So his teaching was to always put Dharma first, because there are some forgetful people that have actually mixed these up. Also, of course, a natural ending to everything will be moksha. That's there on the pillar, right? And it's basically freedom. Not a freedom that's gained ever, a freedom that's always at hand, that is your true nature. Atman is moksha. That is your nature is always free, but you've decided to enter into the worlds of name and form and congeal things with this powerful mind. That's called sankalpa, projection of mind. Playing with forms, playing with names. You do it in dreaming and you do it in the waking state. In deep sleep, it goes into abeyance. So these Purusharthas then are a great teaching, starting with Dharma, ending with Moksha. There are many philosophies in India that are very, very complex, like yoga, psychology, for instance, very complex. Tantra, very complex. You need good teachers to guide yourself through those. But 4 Fruits of Life is a simple teaching, really. And it pretty much summates the path that the soul takes. Or, put it this way, the path that the soul should take. Should start with Dharma. Let's look at some of the bullet points. Call this up on my own. Dharma, very, very hard to define that word. Some people say righteousness, doesn't really cover it. But we're saying here, life lived in pursuit of a spiritual path. That's Dharma. And life means dedicating your whole life to it. It's not something that can run hot or cold or drop in and come back. You have to dedicate yourself, take a commitment, dedicate yourself to it, and never give it up until you reach the essence of Dharma. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna, whose image is on the wall there, as charioteer to Arjuna's chariot in the great Kurukshetra war, that's there in the Mahabharata and then also depicted in the Bhagavad Gita, that great scripture. He says, you must go beyond adharma to dharma, Arjuna. Though adharma means lack of rules and regulations and righteousness and so forth, evil doings and so forth. In fact, you could say that those things are committed under the covering power and distorting power, right? If avarana and vikshepa shakti are in your mind, then your acts are not going to be karmically pure and clear. So you'll have bad karmas, bad effects coming back. But if you go beyond adharma to dharma, then you begin to have sattva, you begin to have balance. Prakasha Shakti enters into the picture, and all of a sudden all your acts are good acts, and you're having good effects come from them. And that's going from good to better. But you want to go from good to better to best, Vivekananda used to say. And so best here in this case is going to be this absolute freedom. See, that's going to take you over. So that's called swadharma. So Krishna gives that teaching in the Gita. Adharma, dharma, and swadharma. So he also says, you must know that all knowledge and all wisdom must end in truth. So adharma, vikshepa, and avarana shaktis, you're muddling around in darkness, in mixed light, mixed darkness sometimes. 2 lower gunas, right? But when you get to sattva or the revelatory power, all of a sudden you're having dharma, you're understanding the teachings, and they make sense to you, and you begin to pursue them and follow them. But then you find out that you can just become a professional dharmi. You see, a professional spiritual aspirant. And that's not good, because then you never realize the truth, and the truth never sets you free. You just know a lot about spiritual things. Vivekananda made that statement once in front of his monk brothers. He said, well, it's true that most any of us can talk a great strain, talk very high and very beautiful about divine reality, but very few have realized it. So he was making the observation there that realization is higher than just dharmic insight. So you have to go beyond knowledge to truth, is how Krishna put that in the Gita. So to do that, then you're going to have this word called swadharma. So that's a good teaching that goes along. Another triputi. Triputi means triple teaching that you can contemplate in your mind. Adharma, dharma, and swadharma, your highest destiny. For instance, so many people, even if they're living good, sattvic, balanced, happy lives, even contented, but I never really got to do what I wanted to do. I never really found the meaning of my life. You hear it all the time. So swadharma would be your highest destiny, what you are actually intended for. By who? By you. God doesn't have any intentions for you. You, the soul, are that God. And before you were born, you looked at relativity and you chose your parents, you chose your lifestyle, you chose your gender. This was all, what to speak of prenatal, beyond prenatal and postnatal. It was your witness consciousness looking at your own desire to inhabit a body. You're coming back to the realm of name and form, you're coming from a formless state. So how wide is my third eye open at that point? See, what level of existence have I mastered that I can take on a body consciously, or at least dharmically, or in the case of so many other beings, take on a body in ignorance. That's called samsara, or Maya in Vedanta. Buddhism and Vedanta both use those words. So you can see the import then of swadharma, of reaching a highest destiny, because all of a sudden you're born and you're actuating exactly what you had in mind for yourself before you took on a body. I will go there and I will do this and I will do that. I will master and I will take up a divine work and I will accomplish what I set out to do. And then I'll wrap it all up at the end and get moksha. See? And I won't have to come back into form anymore. I've been there, I've done that, and I don't have any desires for it anymore. I asked my old mother before she left the body, do you have any desires? Do you want to do this again? She said, no, I don't have anything. Only interest I have is what happens to my children. She had 5 children. So I had given her the mantra well before she passed away and taught her the Vedanta and gave her a spiritual name and gave her initiation. And she said at the very end of her life, it must have been a few months later, she was gone. No, I don't want to come back here. So sometimes I ask my students that, want to come back? Some say, yeah. In a enlightened condition, I'll come back, but not in ignorance. And others say, no, I don't want to come back at all. So basically there's another teaching there. You know, Jivan Mukta means living liberated soul. Videha Mukti means no bodies anymore. Vivekananda, for instance, often said, I just want to be a voice without a body. Sort of like an oracle. If I could be a voice without a body and just come and talk to you, that'd be great. But if I come into the body and talk to you, I have to take on your suffering. You see? He didn't say that, I'm putting that words in his mouth. But it's obvious he passed away at 39 years of age, you see. And Ramakrishna at 50, so they were taking on huge amounts of people's karma. A kind of vicarious atonement that exists there in Hinduism. So if you, and it's not just the great beings that do that, we do that. You have a baby, you take on its cold. And its cold is coming from karmas. So whatever you do in the world, you're rubbing up against collective karma, aren't you? The collective body of things. And the collective body quite often is attended, you see, by Vikshepa and Avarana Shakti. Collective mind, you see. So you're rubbing up against the collective karma of beings as well as your own individual karma. It's a lot to take on. So let's go through this. We have 10 minutes left before we end the first half. The second half is shorter, by the way, if you're not quite used to such a flow of transmission of wisdom. Remember, we practice the inundation method here in Vedanta. We immerse you in many dharmic teachings, as opposed to the sieve method, where you just get one trickle straight and go home and try and digest it. You can't know everything anyway, so we're just going to inundate you with wisdom. And then you can go home and squeeze the sponge of your mind out later, see, and keep what is pertinent to you at that particular time. So don't worry if you're not understanding everything, or even if the Sanskrit is a little bit alien to you. We always give the English equivalents to the Sanskrit, so you can actually learn a language when you're here. That language is called Deva Bhasha, language of the gods, and a whole cross-section of a culture got enlightened by it. So it has very great power in it. It even has words of power like Om and Hrim, as we're talking about. So in the 10 minutes remaining, let's look down at the points of Dharma. It should be implemented before kama and artha, before desire and before wealth seeking. Must be adhered to in all activities to ensure harmonious existence. If you fall out of the Dharma, then you'll fall out of harmony with other beings, other races, with your ancestors, with the gods. You'll fall out of harmony with the whole shooting match. Because the dharmic laws are, the seers and the sages are adhering to them, you see. I mean, you talk about celestials and angels and gods and goddesses. Don't forget that there's a sphere of intelligence called the Gyanakasha, where the seers and sages keep their subtle bodies. So that's a whole level. If you're here with me, then you're here with Swami Sheshananda, my teacher. You're here with Swami Vivekananda. You're here with Sri Sharda Devi, their teacher. You're here with Sri Ramakrishna, who is her teacher. So you've come into the realm of the ancient Indian rishis, and their souls might as well be in their books that are all over the shelves of this room. And the power of them in these words, which they have spoken, written down. So you have shifted levels. It's not like my ancestors were living in some other time. See, it's not the idea. Time is not linear. It's layer-caked. All yugas are existing at the same time, and the soul can go to either any one it wants. It's a level of mind. So if you fall into the idea of things being linear, then you're talking about phases of time, and it doesn't make sense that my ancestors are living somewhere. You see, they're gone. They're only in my memory now. But you know, memory is a very powerful thing in my tradition. It's called smriti, and each one of the levels of your mind has a memory. Even a plant has a memory in it. A seed, a tree has its seeds, and those are memories of producing more trees, you see. So there's a memory in everything. If this memory gets deeper and deeper and deeper in you, pretty soon it's your dream memory, then eventually it'll be memory of formlessness. And pretty soon you'll start remembering lifetimes where you actually had moksha. You had glimpses of being free. And that's in your memory too. You can't forget a thing like that. Seeing the light. Every one of us has it. It's just how deep is it buried under the avarana and vikshepa shaktis, right? Under the covering power, under the distorting power. If I can bring revelatory power forward, then I can unbury those things. I can remember samadhi. And that's actually what's happening to every seer that goes into samadhi, isn't it? They're remembering that they are that. Not just that they've had that, but that they are that, you see. The difference between immersion and absorption in Patanjali's yoga. You can immerse, but that's the process of getting in. But once you're absorbed, that's it. See? Usually no coming back, like a moth into a bonfire. Now the quote there under that, from the Mahanarayana Upanishad. Dharma, religious righteousness, is the support of the whole universe. All people draw near a person who is fully devoted to Dharma. Through Dharma, a person chases away sin. All are supported by Dharma. Therefore, they say that Dharma is the means for liberation. Moksha. There you are. Now, in between Dharma and moksha, which is pretty much what the seer will live, these won't concern him, are these problematic areas, kama and artha. Let's look at them. Kama, legitimate desires not contrary to dharma. So right there, you know that you have to fulfill your desires in the dharma, not outside the dharma, if you want to keep a harmonious life, balanced life, and revelatory shakti in your kin. The 3 points there is it must be monitored and controlled in order to avoid rebirth in samsara, which is why I just said, my mother, students I've asked, do you want to be reborn again? Not in samsara. See, I will be reborn again. I have some things to work out. I want to work them out in dharma. If I have a message to give, I want to do it in the dharma. If I want to sport, I want to do it in the dharma. See, so whatever level the soul, partially perfected, or still working, comes back into the body, they'll want to adhere to the dharma. I asked one very, very wise person on the mainland once, what's the bottom line for you? And this person said to me, I want dharmic parents next time. You don't get that in the West, you might have noticed. You're lucky if you get moral parents these days. Dharmic parents are rare as hen's teeth. Where are they? Those who teach their children that birds have nests, foxes have holes, but you have no place to lay your head here. Instead, they're teaching them this without these. See, make money, be successful, support me when I'm old. In other words, I'm in Maya, you be in Maya too. We can share Maya together. You can come visit me with your Mayic children. You can eat Mayic food with me at my table. So those are very rare. So this person said, I want dharmic parents. If I have to come back here again, that's what I want first and foremost, because that will get me free. Give me a good start in life. That's my impetus, you see. Many of us came in the West to this Vedanta very late. I came when I was 19. And I've known other people who have come even younger in their teens, but most people come very late to Vedanta. It's a finishing school of spirituality. Buddhism too is same, like Vedanta. Very much finishing schools. You're going to get the highest dharma taught to you there. Whether you accept it or not is up to you. And further, whether you do anything about it, with it, when you have it, is also up to you. But a seed will be planted in you. That's how Vivekananda said. A seed will be planted in you. It can be refined and sublimated so as to lead towards higher destiny. Well, then your desires can turn from base desires to ordinary desires, which are non-harmful, but what you want is desires that increase your dispassion. You want to be through with desires. Desire in every religion I've ever looked into is the enemy. So there are differences between desires that lead you into bondage and desires that increase your dispassion, that fulfill you. That's why this is first. Desires will not fulfill you. It would be like adding gas to a fire to try and put it out if you pursue your desires without the Dharma first. Third, should be aligned with devotion to God and freedom from attachments. So check your desires in with those things. If they run counter to God and the Dharmic teachings and the ability, the desire to get free, mumukshutvam, which we'll look at after the break, then you can be sure that these desires are leading in a dharmic direction. The quote there, and then we will have to take the rest of this after the break, is, there are two kinds of desires, one that stimulates enjoyment and the other that quickens dispassion. In the case of the devotees who adhere to Dharma, desires are mere nothings. The more they come and go, the better it will be for them. And so, my children, do not worry. The desires of your mind, you must fulfill them. Later on, you will attain to eternal peace. So that's a very precious teaching from who? From Sri Sharda Devi, my teacher's teacher, whose image is here on the altar. We sing to her about that. Sharade, oh Sharade, Vikya Vinashane Sharade, Brahma Sanatani Sharade Prema Swarupine Sharade Karuna Rupini Sharade Patita Pavani Sharade Namo Narayani Sharade, and so forth and so on. That is Vikya Vinashana, you are the remover of impediments. Brahma Sanatani, you are the eternal principle of Brahman. Prema Swarupini, you are the essence of love for all beings. Karuna Rupini, you are the essence of compassion for all suffering souls. Patita Pavani, you are the savior of the fallen and the lowly ones. Namo Narayani, I pay my obeisances to you, O Divine Mother of the Universe. Now here we will take our break and come back in 15 minutes. The live streaming audience can look at these on their screens while we take our break. Namaste. part B of class 4 is where you find yourself now, or if you're looking at one of those star maps that say you are here, and they have a little arrow in the vast universe, then you are on Mother's spiritual map right here at the base of this pillar with the Purusharthas called the 4 fruits of life. Purusharthas. It's really a sort of a Divine Mother, therefore tantric kind of teaching, but it really has elements of yoga and Vedanta in it. As we've said, very hard to separate the streams of yoga, Vedanta, and Tantra, and I'd say even Buddhism, because they're so India, and they're so similar in their conclusions and their precepts, and they're in the Dharma. Probably you could make a general distinction to say Vedanta really is sort of the mind of India, and Tantra is more like the heart with all its worship, and yoga is more like the energy, and Samkhya is more like the body. So that's the well-rounded fourfold body, mind, energy, heart complex of any good human being. When you have Vedanta, Tantra, Yoga, and Samkhya, the 4 of those Astika Darshanas that we just mentioned on this pillar, then you have a well-rounded path of life, of spiritual life particularly, that is a fine combination of cosmology is in terms of practice, in terms of principles, and then a well-rounded practice in terms of yoga. You have an actual hands-on practice, and then you have the devotional aspect in the heart with Tantra, worship of Krishna, worship of Shiva, worship of Mother, worship of Ganesha, who is here on our wall. And then you have Vedanta, the brain or the mind, which is really going more toward the non-dual and making these great declarations, of some of which you'll see here when I look at the Shatsampati and called Sadhana Chatushtaya. After we finish this chart on the Purusharthas, we'll go straight there and you'll see one of the great tenets of Vedanta and how it really is just a statement of fact, statement of truth. It doesn't mess around a lot with anything other than pretty much non-duality. Even what semblance of practice called sadhana you can find in the Vedanta is pretty much razor's edged. It doesn't mess around a lot with systems or lengths of time or evolution or transformation. It just declares the truth, and the truth sets you free. So it's very non-dual in its essence that way. That's why Vivekananda brought it first and foremost, although he also brought the Raja Yoga and teachings on books on Sanskrit and teachings on Samkhya. The Vedanta was first and foremost for him. So with that as a sort of opening to the second half here, and for about an hour we have left or less, we have looked at these first 2 Purusharthas, fruits of life. Always start with Dharma, and we looked at its 3 bullet points and had a quote from the Mahanarayana Upanishad. And then you can look to Kama. Many people are probably thinking Kama Sutra, because when you think of an Indian scripture, worldly people always say Kama Sutra, but spiritual people also say Gita. So that word Kama is a Sanskrit word that has worked its way into English language, desire, but you can see how it's used here in the more traditional teachings. It's legitimate desire you want to avail yourself of, and you have to be very wary of the other kind, illegitimate desire, desire that's enacted outside of the Dharma. And that's why that last quote that we ended up the first half with is very important. She makes that distinction, and I sang that song about her to sort of bring the point home for you in your tantric heart, because it probably registered in your Vedic mind, but your tantric heart had to also have its helping of assistance. So when she says one kind of desire stimulates enjoyment, another kind or second kind stimulates or quickens your dispassion, and she's saying make sure you make the discrimination between them, and always choose those that quicken your dispassion, that fulfill your desires. My teacher used to give a lecture once a year. He'd call it "Satiation Never Comes." And he'd start out, he was a monk for, some 70 years of his life, of his 90-year-old life. So, and then he would, somewhere in that beginning of that talk, he'd always refer to satiation never comes. And he'd also say in there, the West is following the Bhoga Marga. You cannot make any spiritual progress following the Bhoga Marga. You must follow the Jnana Marga. So he used to say, and after that he'd say, you need God vision, not television, things like that. So he'd start to bring the point home. And so Bhoga Marga means path of enjoyment. And we're bound to feel maybe guilty when that's pointed out to us because we do have so many enjoyments, actually exquisite enjoyments in the West, and plenty of money and time to enjoy them if we don't get sidetracked by rajas or vikshepa shakti, the restless power, the distorting power. But we also have this free time. Einstein said, if you have free time, then you can improve yourself spiritually, religiously. You need that. So it says, hurry up and get done with your schooling so you can get a real education. That was one of the things Einstein said about this higher turn towards God. So that kind of attitude then, even among the Westerners, people like Romain Rolland and Aldous Huxley and some of our great, our own ascetics, that went to the woods and cabins, Walt Whitman and so forth, that kind of person, were into the Upanishads. They were reading them, and kind of the forerunners to a lot of our Neo-Vedanta that's going on now, and they were very much ennobled by taking in these great teachings of the Vedas and Upanishads early on, sort of seeding our culture early on with that, so the rest of us could come along and pick up the thread of that. So the beautiful thing about knowing the distinction between the two types of desires, rather than just going back to this sort of sin and damnation, sin is desire is a bad thing and you have to root it out by the roots, is that you find out there's a kind of desire that's under the auspice of Prakasha Shakti. It can lead you on. Your desires can actually become a kind of revelation to you. Because the desire for devotion to God, for instance, is a beautiful desire. People used to ask Ramakrishna, isn't all desires bad, so isn't devotion to God also a desire to have devotion to God bad? And he said, oh, no, it's like some greens will give you acid, indigestion and so forth, but the hincha greens will not do that. They're very good for your digestion. So there's a kind of green in India that's very good for your digestion, evidently. So he says desires are like that. Some of them just will give you bad karma, and others are actually very good for you. So that's a teaching around desire that's non-conventional. It's like I mentioned this morning in satsang, one monk came up to Ramakrishna and said, how do I get rid of lust? And Ramakrishna said, don't, increase it. And the young monk was kind of surprised to hear his master say that. And what do you mean by that, sir? Was the question. And he said, lust after God. Increase your lust and turn it towards God. And if you have anger, then be angry that others have realized God and you haven't. Same with jealousy. If you have jealousy, be jealous of others who are enlightened and you haven't got it yet. So give all of your passions, lust, anger, greed, envy, shame, pride of caste, pride of lineage, greed, shame. They're called the 6 passions and the 8 fetters. Give all of them a positive turn. And now you're talking about higher tantra here, not the lower tantra that the West is involved in, where you're into sexual objects and drinking taking intoxicants. That's basically what the West thinks about as tantra, and so it kind of got a bad name. But you might call it the right-hand tantra path, or the right tantra path to follow, is this taking up of your desires and not looking at them as black marks on your soul that you'll never get rid of, but actually taking them and making a positive turn with them. It's one of the beautiful things about tantric teaching. So again, we're bound to maybe feel a little bit of shame and remorse and so thing around these kinds of things, but here she's saying, for you, my children, do not worry. The desires of your mind, you will fulfill them. Later on, you will attain eternal peace. The more these desires come and go for you, the better, she said. So she wants you to experience them. Not in the way some of the pseudo-teachers of recent times, I'm not going to mention any names, that have come from India have told you just to engage in all of your sexual activities and don't have any stops on your organ. Bach had a lot of stops in his organ. How many children did he have? So there's a joke about musically we usually say about that. So anyway, this idea about pulling back from the sexual objects and from the desires of the senses and everything to store up power inside of yourself, and then using that power to place it on the heart and open up the heart chakra. That's all about sublimation. One of the best words in the West we have in English language to explain Tantra is sublimation. It's not repression or any of those words that are kind of warning words for the Western psychologists, but basically sublimation is a very good way of saying how you take this energy up and refine it. Pure food, she said, actually, is another one of her great quotes, you must turn pure food into pure blood into pure thought, and pure thought into pure mind, and pure mind is God. So this is a practice that you do by stages that starts with your food. And being very observant about not just what you eat, but how you eat it. It's even more important to bless it and to remove the imperfections in it. Not just that it's organic or inorganic, that's not what they're talking about so much. If you can get organic food without breaking your pocketbook, great. See, as soon as they find out you want organic food, even though they didn't have to spend the money for pesticides and spraying, they're going to raise the price on it because people want it. It's a specialty item all of a sudden, you see. So that's greed. It's one of those passions in the human mind. But if you can just purify food of the inherent defects in it through mantra, that's what they're talking about. The inherent defects in food are that it didn't get enough sunshine and water, rain, or that somebody grew it for money. That's an inherent defect in food. That whoever cooked it, was having a bad day, so their bad mood got into the vibration of your food. It's all about vibration. So these you remove, you see, by mantras, and then you take the food. So those are more tantric teachings, higher teachings about how to sublimate things. It's a very beautiful path, actually, that should be called back into the Vedic fold, and welcomed again, and given this new interpretation, this better interpretation. So those are great teachings by her. Now, that sort of covers a lot about kama and desire from a more enlightened standpoint, I think. Let's look at artha. Artha is right livelihood. I'm borrowing a Buddhist phrase there because right livelihood is one of the eightfold path of Lord Buddha. It happens very early on, after right perspective. You have right perspective first about everything. That would sort of be dharma, wouldn't it? And then you can go in and have samyak, perfection in other things. All of the eightfold path starts with the Sanskrit word samyak, or Pali word. So now you have right livelihood in keeping with dharmic principles. So you had desire in keeping with dharmic principles. Now right livelihood. I just got a message today from one of my students, actually an Indian man, who said, I work in a workplace where people are lying to each other and lying to the customers. How do I deal with this? So I hear this all the time. People with a conscience, if you want to use an old-fashioned word, but people with more of a dharmic perspective, to use a more contemporary term of phrase, that they're very conscious about wanting their work to be, karma is work. They want their karma to be clean and clear. And so it's very difficult to do that in the collective consciousness, collective mind, whatever collective body you happen to be associating with. So in that way, you see how important it is to people to follow the Dharma, even in terms of wealth. And it's very difficult to purify wealth. Wealth leaves a distortion on everyone who owns it, you see. So you have to be very careful with it. The 3 bullet points for artha then: predicated upon a balanced lifestyle married to the quality of generosity. Beautiful, you see. So you get sattva, You earn your money in sattva, and then you practice generosity with it. You give it away. And of course, you don't give it away unless you're able to live without food and roof over your head like a sannyasin can, and they won't even own money anyway. But you can be a kind of person that can give away too much. Generous to a fault, they say. You have to be very careful. But you can give according to your capacity. See? And as I was saying this morning at satsang, you call that danam in our tradition. Dana means giving, tithing, so the idea of tithing in English. So that you give a certain amount of your income to organizations that are teaching the Dharma. The rest you use to raise a dharmic family. Like that person I mentioned the first half, I want dharmic parents next time, that's my bottom line. Well, then, those kinds of people will be making sure the Dharma can at least exist, and hopefully that it will thrive. You can see Dharma thrive in the West, and by the way, that's the purpose that Dalai Lama is here, and that's the reason why Mao Zedong was there, and that's the reason why there are evil people in the world. That's why even Avaran and Vikshepa Shakti have a purpose. It's not like an insentient devil that's just all bad, see? But there's positivity in negative things, and there's negativity in positive things. And you have to, suffering is, in other words. So you have to get used to this and adapt to that. If you dam up a river outside your house and so your kids can swim, someone downstream is dying of thirst, you see. So you committed an evil karma, and that karma will come back to you, even though it was probably, especially since it was unconscious way you did it. You see, you weren't taking things into consideration. So all the seers and sages are very careful when they move here in the level of relativity, in physical bodies and so forth, with individual and collective mind going on. They're very careful what they do here, because anything can go awry. So even for a very careful, masterful person. The Roshi has to learn to walk across rice paper, you see, without leaving a wrinkle. Or a bird flies through the sky, but it doesn't leave a trace. You see, so that's the way the very careful enlightened soul have to move amongst the realm of action and their repercussions. So, on the level of artha, then this becomes very important. You have to offset your money making with generosity. I think it's a beautiful thing. We wish it would happen more often. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, I saw a person who had millions of rupees that he was spending on his daughter's wedding. In India, the weddings, you hire everything from elephants to musical bands and parades and everything. Huge, huge affairs you might have seen. So this man is spending 1 million rupees or 1 billion rupees on his daughter's wedding, but his neighbor just lost his house and he's out on the street. I mean, this happens literally in India. When someone's out in the street in the West, unless you see a street person somewhere, usually they have somewhere to go. Something will happen. Some relative will take them in, they'll live in some back room, and then they'll call themselves homeless in a way. But in India, you actually do become homeless. People are lying around the streets of Calcutta all the time, every night. They find a place with a piece of cardboard and they lie down, and that's where they sleep that night. It's almost a part of the culture. But my point being here that you have a person who's spending billions of rupees on his daughter's wedding, and their next door neighbor who's out in the street won't even give him a handful of rice, Sri Ramakrishna said. Won't even go out there and give him a handful of rice. Human nature. So this is the idea that's brought forward about generosity. You should be a part of your dharmic practice to engage in it whenever you, especially if it comes into your periphery. I mean, you don't have to go looking for these things, but if it suggests itself to you or it comes into your atmosphere, then it's really Divine Mother herself is calling it forward to you to do something. So that's your opportunity. Second bullet point here, demands that one moves among the sense objects without attachment. So a yogi can actually own many things. He won't say they're mine, but he can move amongst the sense objects without being attached to them. So you find yogi householder couples. See, maybe they have children, maybe they don't, but they're living in a fine house and they have a few pieces of furniture. If they're sattvic, they usually live in a very bare place. You see, like some of Ramakrishna's disciples, a couple of them are rich, and you go to their house and they don't have any furniture. And they don't sweep and clean the cobwebs, you see. And they're just very, very sattvic and just living. They have plenty of money, but they just don't have any desire for pleasure. And so they're living in a kind of sattvic state, you see. Have a roof over their head, but they're not into pleasurable furnishings. Things, you see. They just sleep on a cot on the floor or something, on a mat. And that's fine for them. And then they'll go on practicing. Sri Ramakrishna said, those people sit under a mosquito net at night, and everyone thinks they're sleeping, but they're actually doing japa of the Lord. Nobody can see them, but they're actually saying the Lord's name late into the night. See? And so that's a sattvic devotee, he says. He had a few like that. So move amongst the sense objects, but don't become attached to them. It's one of the rules of thumb, again, around artha, under the auspice of dharma. Third point, based upon the twin ideals of non-ownership and careful responsibility. So those are kind of the two pillars of artha. Non-ownership, you're going to custodian things, but you won't own a thing. I don't own a house, I don't own land, even if there's a deed in your name. That's just a paper, so you don't own them. So you never fall into the problem of ownership or agency. Those are the two great problems in spiritual life. Ownership and agency. I'm not the agent of my actions, and I'm not the owner of anything. If you can practice that truly, honestly, and sincerely, then the third problem, sense of separation from God, will also dwindle, you see. You'll feel more and more at one-ment, as they say, with divine reality. So those are the three, if you want to put them in, look at the Hindian sweep of Hindian scriptures, and put it in a way the Westerner can understand it. That's the way we used to do in early SRV days, 20 years ago when we first started. This is our 20th anniversary. We said, how can we put all those great teachings in a way the Westerner can just understand it quickly? Okay, here it is. Non-ownership, non-agency, non-separation. If you can adhere to those three principles and practice them, you'll be fine. The Dharma will be alive and well in you. So the quote here is Lord Buddha's. Who else to talk to us about that than him? Blessed are those who live amidst abundance, and among those who long for possessions, yet whose longing is not for the world, but rather for the supreme happiness of spiritual bliss. Isn't that beautiful? In the Dhammapada, the earliest teachings of Buddha, that occurs. Blessed are those who live amongst abundance, but whose longing is for spiritual bliss instead. Very hands-on way of putting it, that idea of non-ownership. Let's move on to moksha. Of course, that is, we've already taken it as a teaching back on the chart, the top of the pillar. So it's fitting that it should be at the very root of the pillar too, in this pillar, of course. The Purusharthas we're studying right now, all of you, the four fruits of life, here's the fourth. Let's read the quote first this time. Lord Vashishta, one of the ancient rishis of India, says, firm conviction of oneself as Brahman is moksha. One of two or three of the best definitions of moksha I've ever heard is that sentence. Firm conviction of oneself as Brahman is moksha. If you have the firm conviction that I and my Father are one, that's freedom. Even recognition of the fact, that's called enlightenment. See, so there are different ways of saying it. This is Vashishta's way. He goes on, moksha arises in the mind that longs for moksha. This man was great, you see. Vashishta, everyone reveres him. And the scripture, Yoga Vashishta, is like a cult classic in the West. You can go on the web and type in Yoga Vashishta, and you'll see all these groups that follow it, who are Westerners. And they're not really regarding any other aspects of the Hindu Dharma necessarily. He says, that's my thing. I like what he says. I'm a Yoga Vashishta follower. Forget Star Trek. You don't have to be a Trekkie. Be a Truthie. I'll be a Truthie and follow Lord Vashishta. He goes on, it is the goal towards which all tend. Initiation and instruction from a guru and a spotless intelligence are the two means to moksha. Find a teacher and refine your intelligence, and you'll have freedom at hand. Those virtuous ones who gain moksha from early childhood and train themselves in Atmagyan and associate with great beings, those are the most virtuous ones. So, I want dharmic parents, right? They who from a very early age train themselves up in Dharma, they get moksha. Isn't it a perfect way to end this explication of the four fruits, famous four fruits of Divine Mother Reality? Let's look at the bullet points and move on. First, it is founded in self-inquiry, which leads to knowledge of the real and the unreal. When we go to this, we'll see that Viveka and Vairagya are very important, knowing the difference between the real and the unreal. So that's actually the first treasure of Vedanta, of the of the Shatsampati, and it's called the Sadhana Chatushtaya, the four treasures and the six jewels. We'll get to that. Don't start taking notes on it yet. Stay focused here. So, it's founded in self-inquiry, which leads to knowledge of the real and the unreal. And you know the difference between the essential and the non-essential. What's important and what's not so important. You make that swift and sure act of discrimination. The word is Viveka. So important that Swamiji took it for his name, Swami Vivekananda. Second bullet point is revealed upon the extinction of desires leading to quiescence of mind. Why you want to satisfy your desires for wealth and for any other participation in relativity in the Dharma, so that it will lead to moksha. It is a state in which objects, their knower and knowledge are not found. So now he's giving us a definition of actual moksha. The person in moksha will not find objects. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the further you go towards Brahman, the further away you will go from the world. This is not a popular notion. People want to have God and the world both. Not that it's not possible, but they fall into the Bhogamarga, don't they? And then spirituality goes by the wayside. Oh, I'll get to that later, after I finish this book, or after I go on this vacation. Or I'll practice meditation soon. I want to get a teacher. It's on my list. See? So you begin to, seek everything that will be added unto you first, and forget about the Lord and Mother of the Universe. So that's the problem with that kind of psychology. So what you want to do is come to understand another one of these triple teachings. There's the knower, there's knowledge, and then there's the thing to be known. Krishna puts that very nicely in the Gita. He has a whole list of things to be known, which are dharmic, and a whole list of things which are adharmic. Sometimes he calls it the division between the divine and the demoniacal. So it's just basic discrimination between the real and the unreal. Those 3 points are there under moksha, just like the 3 points under artha, kama, and dharma. This has been the Purusharthas, brought to you by the Divine Mother of the Universe and all the rishis. A beautiful teaching from the Vedic fold and Tantric fold both. Now, let's look at this 4 treasures and 6 jewels in the time remaining. Next week, not next Sunday, sorry, Sunday after next, because there's a Christmas break next Sunday, we'll start Shakta Advaita Vada 2, and we'll begin with here with the Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Trinity. I have a new chart on that, which you will like to see, and also a semi-new chart that some of you haven't seen about the Trinity that is very important. So back to Purusharthas, 4 fruits of life, how important those things are to understand. Now, in fact, they're in a song. I was going to have a note here that they're actually listed in a song, these 4. They sing. Bhavani Nagendra Nandini Nagnaga Pasha Gorani Nadini Bhairavi Bhavani Nagendra Nandini Nagnaga Pasha Gorani Nadini Gyanendra Jupendra Jogendra Dikoto Gyanendra Jupendra Jogendra Dikoto Charane Podiya Diva Shirajani Jaya Jaya Jagavani Jaya Jaya Jagavani. Devi Dukkha Harini Tarini. What a beautiful name for mother. She's got hundreds and thousands of those names, all pregnant with meaning and so wonderful and inspiring. Devi, the goddess, Dukkha, suffering, Harini, remover of, Tarini, compassionate. You put those together in any definition or order you want, and you'll be pointing to this wonderful Divine Mother of the universe that millions of beings love. Swami Vivekananda, she is a special object of my devotion. No progress will be made in the world until you realize her. No progress in spiritual life can be made till you realize Shakti power, Divine Mother power. Swami Brahmananda, Mother is 1,000 times more gracious than Father. I can go on pulling seers and saints out of the timeless beginnings of scriptures of India and begin to tell you what they said about Mother. Always hidden though, always hidden behind the scenes. Yogis go into dark mountain caves, Ram Prasad sings, so that her brilliance will be all the more pronounced when her vision comes to them. See? So they'll sense deprive themselves in absolute darkness so that when they close their eyes or open their eyes, doesn't matter, her brilliance will be that much more stark against that pitch blackness. So there's so many beautiful things about Mother. We're concentrating pretty much on her territories here, but we give retreats, sometimes once a year, 3 of them so far, on Divine Mother reality, in which we engage in singing these songs with each other. So that song says, basically, Jnanada Varada Sukhada Mokshada, and Gyanendra, Jupendra, Jogendra, Dikoto. So Jnanada, doesn't that sound like Dharma to you? And Varada, doesn't that sound like Kama to you? And Shukada, happiness, doesn't that sound like wealth to you? And Moksha sounds like itself, of course. So Gyanendra, Jupendra, and Jogendra Dikoto, and Jnanada, wisdom, Varada, protection, Shukada, Mokshada, that is, happiness and liberation. So you're pretty much talking about the 4 fruits of life when you sing that. Now, let us go over to the Sadhana Chatushtaya and Shatsampat, the 6 jewels. So this is the first treasure. Here's the second treasure. This is all the third treasure. So it's 6-fold. Shatsampati. That's the, here, when I put Shatsampati. That's the 6 treasures. And then it ends in Mumukshutvam, which is a desire for this. Mumukshutvam, moksha, they sound much the same, like mukti and moksha. So when you go through all of this, Vedantically speaking, which is very much a mental, intellectual purification, it's a practice that goes on in your head. By reading scriptures, by hearing the truth from the teachers, and by practicing your sadhana, meditation, and so forth, this is a mental practice. Pujas can be offering flowers and incense and so forth, like we did here last night, but you can do the whole puja in your mind first. Better to do it in your mind first and then do it that way. Most people go the other way. They learn it outwardly, outward ritual, and they might get stuck there, you see. But usually you're going to sit down and close your eyes and enact everything, see, before you do it. If you can do that with your day, you probably start hitting some of those marks that you're aiming at instead of missing them all the time. You should envision your day, in other words. Yesterday's imagination is today's envisionment. Today's envisionment is tomorrow's realization. That's how my teacher used to put it. You can start with imagination, but don't get caught in cartoons. See? You have to go on to realizing that imagination in a vision. You see, and so this all takes place inside of your own mind, because that's where all the worlds are. Even this world is nothing but inside your mind. Trees, lakes, mountains, they all come from your thoughts. Holy Mother said that objects are just thought concretized. Objects are thought concretized. How's that for a 5-word teaching of power? See? 4-word, actually. So if you just sit and take a 4-word teaching like that, all of this has come out of my mind, you see. So why don't you go back in your mind and find where it came from and start to remove little imperfections in your creation. They're appearing out here, right? In trees and oceans, fears, doubts, problems, everything from getting eaten by a shark to stubbing your toe. So let's go back inside, you see, and see where stubbing the toe started from, where the shark started from, where fear started from, everything that's in my mind. And that's what you do when you practice something like the 4 treasures and 6 jewels. Let's look at it in the remaining half hour, I think we have. There you see the quote, "The sages have spoken of 4 qualifications for spiritual attainment." This is in Vedanta now. Deep discrimination between the eternal and the non-eternal, renunciation of the fruits of action, acquiring the 6 jewels, and longing for liberation. When these 4 are present, devotion to reality succeeds. When they are absent, it will fail. So Vedanta is talking about an inner practice that you do in your mind, sort of like meditation. That's why Vedanta cuts here. It doesn't cut down here, you see. It cuts at the throat of ignorance. That's why Kali is holding a severed head and a bloody sword on the other hand. You might look at that and say, yikes, that's a wrathful deity. But the head is smiling. You ever notice that in those icons, in those pictures, artist renditions? She has a whole necklace of skulls and they're all smiling. What's that about? No head, no headache. That's what that's about. See? So offer her your neck. See, stick it out there. Oh, mother, cut, quick. You see, that's what a system like Vedanta does. It's the swiftest of all yogas. Devotion is the beautiful slow boat to India. With all the scenes, and all the fun, all the chanting, all the dancing, and so forth. But jnana takes you quickly to the truth. In one lifetime as quickly. See, it cuts there. So it cuts there, as you can see, because of things like viveka, cognizing the distinction between the real and the unreal. And there you see the 2 attendants on viveka, adhiropa and apavada. First, you must recognize false superimposition. This teaching goes very good with what? The 3 Maya Shaktis. Avarana, covering, vikshepa, distortion, right? You must recognize false superimposition, where things are covering the truth in your life, in your mind, in your world. See? I mean, goodness, if we talk about dharma and adharma, then we go into the workplace and we don't practice discrimination, but, and find out where the covering power is happening, then our bosses cheat humanity. See? Multinational corporations ruin the environment. See? So at any level you choose, but in the level of karma yoga, there's a covering power going on. It's deceit, and you have to call it out. Or if you don't have the destiny or the chutzpah to call it out, then you must retreat from it and say, I will not participate in that. There's a better job waiting for me. I must stick with the Dharma. So you can see where I'm going with the connection of these kinds of teachings. Yoga, Tantra, Vedanta, so forth, I've said. They're very connected with each other. You have to look for the connections and make them. Just like bringing two circuits together so the thing will run. The Dharma will run for you as a machine. So, Adyaropa is recognizing false superimposition. Apavada is refutation of misconception. You will do away with the thing only once you recognize it. And if you don't recognize it, then it's either a matter of pretending it away, or you just don't see it. Pretending it away is vikshepa. You just don't see it is avarana. So both of those Maya Shaktis are alive and well in your soul. And Prakasha Shakti is not coming forward to save you. These are Prakasha Shaktis, especially Apavada. She will reveal to you how to get rid of the false superimposition. And if you're talking about workplace, that's one thing. But if you're talking about morality and immorality, that's another area in you that needs work. And then you're talking about telling the truth, that's another area. If you're talking about nonviolence, that's another area. So you begin to hook up the yogic yamas and yamas with what it means to recognize false superimposition and do away with it. Vedanta just takes you to the core, quick. If you don't go to the core quick, you have more time to make a mistake. That's the idea, right? You know how it goes, right? You have the best of intentions. Even spiritual aspirants have the best of intentions, but they get into this stretched out, long, multi-day, multi-month, many-year kind of sadhana, and there's so many areas in which they will fall out of the teachings that are coming from my lips. See? Do you hear the words that are coming out of my mouth? See, as the actor said. See? You must hear them, shruti, you must contemplate them, yukti, and you must realize them, anubhav. Get your full realization from them. See, words are important. So these are three words that you can take with you to the Vedic bank, you see. Viveka, with its two components of Adyaropa, Apavada. That's pure Vedanta right there. This is happening in your head. This is not a Hatha yoga practice. It's not pranayama, breathing exercise. It's not practice of morality and immorality. This is going to the source of the problem, which is the mind. The mind is the source of all problems. Everything happened in the mind first, and then it came out here and spilled out. Thought is father to the deed. So, Vivekananda. We thought it was so important that we made this distinction. Now, Vairagya comes next. Rejecting the unreal and accepting the real. People do discriminate between the real and the unreal. They might even begin to use versions of the Adyaropa Apavada divine duo there, you see. But will they actually, once they make the distinction, retreat from or detach from the unreal? That remains to be seen. There are some 10 or 12 levels to Vairagya, according to some teachings. I think Lord Vashishta gives a version of that, where the first three are very mild detachment, the next four are middling, and the next several are intense. That's, mriga, adimatra, middling, and then higher intense. So 12 levels of discrimination. I can bring you that chart if you want to see it. So a person who, you see, loses a loved one, like a wife or husband, and then is married a year later, that's mild detachment. They lose a loved one, I'm never going to marry again, they say. A year later they're married. So they didn't learn the lesson that everything gets lost here, that all of this is unreal, that all of this is changing, that it's all ephemeral, that suffering is. How many different ways do we have to come back and say, you see? Be careful. Proceed carefully in relativity, like we were saying, about all acts. And be prepared as much as you can. Meditate on death. Vivekananda used to say that. Sit down and say, I'm now without a body. I'm now without senses. I'm now without the breath. And do it inside of yourself. Enter a breathless state. You do it in deep sleep every night. Sometimes go breathless for minutes and nothing happens to your brain cells. And all of a sudden, deep sea diver sounds as the lungs kick in again and the soul comes out of deep sleep and enters dreaming again. It has to breathe, you see. So, practice the art of detachment, vairagya. Viveka vairagya. They sing about it, beautiful songs, you see, there. I played this for 50,000 people about 2 years ago on January 1st in India, and they all started clapping and singing it with me. They like Esheche nutan manas dek bijoli ai chole. Esheche nutan manas dek bijoli ai chole. Tar viveka vairagya juli, viveka vairagya juli, dui kante sada jule. Tar viveka vairagya juli, dui kante sada jule. Esheche nutan manas dek bijoli ai chole. A new man has come. If you want to see him, come with me. He has over his shoulder only one possession. It's a shoulder bag. And inside that shoulder bag are two things, Viveka and Vairagya. It's all he owns. What does he say? Nastiko agyane nare sakarkate shikale. Nastiko agyane nare sakarkate shikale. She Kali, She Krishna, Nama Beda Akbule. She Kali, She Krishna, Nama Beda Akbule. Nastiko. You have to go back, you see. All the orthodox systems. Get rid of ignorance. See. He says, Kali, Krishna, they're all names of the Lord, they're all the same reality. He goes on. Aqua wawa water pani saka. Aqua wawa water pani vare nama de jole. Alaga isa musa kali nama ved bole. 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 Esheche nutan manas dek bijoli ai chole. This rolls on like that, verse after verse. He says, aqua, water, pani, and vari. 4 people come to the lake at different ghats, different landings. One of them takes water and calls it aqua. Another one the Englishman takes water and calls it water. And someone else takes it and calls it vani, and someone else calls it pani and vari, you see. But they're all the same water. He says, Allah, God, in the same way, Allah, God, Isa, Musa, that is, the English calls it God, Muslim calls it Allah, the Hindu calls it Isha, and the Muslim Musa is Muhammad, right? So, Moses. So basically, they're all the same being, coming in these different forms. There's only one reality and it appears in different forms. What's this song about? It's about Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Esheche nutan manas, a new man has come. If you want to see him, come with me. And you'll find that he has just 2 possessions. So beautiful songs going on like that. What did they sing about his disciple, for instance? He's saying, in the same way, because he took Viveka as his name, they go, Himadre Ashrame Jayancham Nirmita Ujanga Shragvrini Tivrite Nutane Stavoyang Yahapate Shakta Tanaraha Sashaktim Parusham Viragam vicharjati. That's the last verse of the hymn to Vivekananda. To all those who would seek true freedom, we encourage the chanting of this hymn, composed in a sacred Himalayan mountain retreat. Devoted recitation of these verses on Swami Vivekananda imbues one with physical vigor, mental strength, and spiritual power, and increases discrimination and detachment. Increases it. And then they would go on singing. Narendra Shashave, Narendra Yovane, Narendra Kridane, Narendra Shikshane, Narendra Palane, Narendra Yarpane, Vivekanandate, Prabhate Pranjali. So these hymns were written in a very short time since Ramakrishna and Vivekananda were in the body. It didn't take more than several decades before their devotees started writing hymns like this by the hundreds. I can't even learn them all. I've been to India 15 times. I come back with a new one every time. You see, they're constantly writing them. Such was the devotion to the avatar of the age, the Kali avatar. So, Viveka Vairagya, Vedantic axiom, you see. And the thing about it is, there really is no practice in Advaita Vedanta, right? If you want an Advaita Vedanta sadhana, this would be it. It's the only simile of a practice that Vedanta even mentions. Yoga, you'll find all sorts of practices. Tantra, you can go sit on a dead corpse in a graveyard at midnight. You see, that's a practice. There's so many practices in the other darshanas, but Vedanta doesn't really give you a practice. It just tells you the truth. So this is the closest thing to a practice a Vedantist could find. It all happens in here. I have to make this sharp distinction between the real and the unreal, and then I have to detach from the unreal. Then I'm fine. I can do this in 6 months. I can do this in a day. I should do it every day. And then I call you a Vedantist, my dear. So, those two mainstays. And then the third pillar, this third treasure is sixfold. Sama, Dhamma, Upariti, Titiksha, Samadana, and Shraddha. There you are. Nice little jewels of different sizes there coming out of the treasure chest. I had fun looking these up, see, and using the images and connecting them. And you see, Sama is inner peace, Dhamma, self-control, Uparati, self-settledness. There's your contentment, which I was mentioning in the first half, in Vedantic style. Titiksha, I mentioned that too, forbearance of all ills. Samadana, concentration, but a kind of concentration which allows you to focus on divine reality only, alone, and won't let anything else intrude. You ever tried that in meditation? It's hard enough just to get rid of thoughts of objects, vrittis, vibrations, like yoga wants you to do, but to try, just to have the ability to sit, close your eyes, and immediately the mind falls into deep, rapt meditation on divine reality. That's samadhana. It's at a very, very high level of Vedantic attainment then. And finally that ends in Shraddha. And my teaching there, which is a kind of signature teaching I've been using as far as the 6 jewels go, is that the Vedantist faith, if any Christian, Muslim, or anyone else comes up to you and says, "What's your faith?" My faith is concentration on reality in which I forbear all ills, and which my mind is completely content, because I have self-control, and that all springs from inner peace, because I detached from the unreal, because in the beginning I got discrimination from all things unreal. I made the distinction between the real and the unreal. So backwards and forwards, you have the faith of a Vedantist. This is what's called rock solid, unshakable faith. And at the beginning, you're not arguing what the difference between the real and the unreal is. You admit there is what's real and there's what's unreal. I just am confused, see, about how they overlap. You see, they seem to overlap. Why do they overlap? Because of this Maya Shakti, called Avarana Shakti, and this Vikshepa Shakti, because truth is being covered and it's being distorted. And I need to get some Prakasha Shakti on my side. A heap and help in the Prakasha Shakti. See? I need that. Now, I don't know how much time we have, but I can't resist singing these 6 jewels in the song. That is one of the, they say that it is really the first song that Swami Vivekananda ever sang to Sri Ramakrishna when they met in that lifetime recently. It goes beautifully. Mono chalo nija iketane. Mono chalo nija iketane. Shamshara videshe videshe veshe Brahma your eternal home. You are a foreigner in this foreign land called Earth. Why do you roam about aimlessly with no real purpose? The 5 senses and the 5 elements, all these are different from you. None of them belong to you. Why have you become senseless in your attachment to others and forgotten your own true nature? Later on in the song about the 6 jewels he sings, O mind, set yourself on the path of truth and walk every moment, lighting your way with the lamp of Dharma. Secretly and with great effort, keep the riches of your good deeds with you for sustenance and protection. Greed and delusion, the highway robbers on the road of life, rob all travelers of their belongings. Therefore, keep with you the 6 sentries, like Sama and Dhamma. So, in scriptures, in their philosophy, in their darshanas, and in songs, these live as a testament to the enlightened lives of souls, of luminaries, who have gone before us, and not in the sense of a river of time, that's spread out in linear fashion, but as a layer cake. They're still here. I am here saying these things. There's only one I. So bring all of this together in you. Be that great I. See? And all of your great souls, all your great teachers, you'll feel them inside of you. And you'll go to them and you'll say, thank you for giving me that wisdom that you have. And they'll say, that's not my wisdom. That's her wisdom. It's just a great testament to us that we remember it from lifetime to lifetime. Give me dharmic parents. See? Now, if you get these, of course they're not unconsiderable as attainments. I mean, even try getting one of them, say inner peace. Holy Mother used to say, you need peace first and foremost, because if you fall into restlessness and laziness, avarana and vikshepa, tamas and rajas, then you can never be content. You'll never get anywhere. Peace of mind is the bottom line then for the aspirant seeking anything. They can get to samadhi through peace of mind. It's a springboard. So if your job has dishonest doings going on, or if your mind is not your friend, or any of these levels of consciousness that you become aware of problems with, you cannot get inner peace. Peace of mind is penultimate to every other thing. So quit your job if it's going to sacrifice your peace of mind. Give up your children and your family if it's going to ruin your peace of mind, because you can't raise anyone right if you don't have peace of mind. A new man has come. He has a shoulder bag with Viveka and Vairagya in it. He's telling you this is the way to get free. Buddha got married too early, had a child too early, named his child Chain Around My Neck. Rahula means chain around my neck. Then he left. Did he leave? When he left, was he guilty because he left his child and wife? No, he got enlightenment and he came back and showed them the Buddha way. So, Sri Ramakrishna says, if your parents stand in the way of your spiritual life, you have a right to renounce them. But if they don't, then I say fie on you if you give them up. That's discrimination, isn't it? Between the real and the unreal. People lost in reality. I recited this morning Ram Prasad's beautiful song. It says, don't you know that all beings are lost here? Everyone lives in pallid imitation of everyone else. That's it. 2 lines of his song. Don't you know that everyone's lost here? How often do you find a person who's found their way and who can, without a doubt, state it to you? See? They're all living in pallid imitation of each other. Rounds of work, rounds of raising families, rounds of ancestors and rebirth. Those are what the great souls wanted off of. If you could do it in Dharma, fine. But to do it in samsara is not to do anything at all. Is to go faster, spin your wheels without going anywhere. So this final treasure here is very revealing of itself. Mumukshutvam, and one of my favorite Swami friends, Elder Swami in India, is called Swami Mumukshanandaji. He has the true desire for liberation. Now this is not moksha, mukti yet. It's the desire for it. You can see what you have to go through then in Indian darshan and Vedanta in order to have an actual, sincere, true desire to be free. In other words, it cannot just be a flash in the pan. Boy, I'm really tired of this rounds of birth and death and ignorance. Don't like my family, don't like my ancestors. I don't like my job. I really want freedom. And you go over for Thanksgiving dinner and they treat you real nice. You say, well, I guess I don't really want freedom after all. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a very strong urge for freedom, was it? Sri Ramakrishna used to say, all of a sudden this young man gets a very strong streak of renunciation, probably because of some karma from a past lifetime. And all of a sudden he says, I'm going to Benares. That's the city of Shiva, where I will renounce everything. Goodbye, everyone. Gives away all his belongings, takes a little tiny cloth and a pot and walks away, waves goodbye to the parents. And they'll say, wow, he's going for enlightenment, you see. About a week later they get a telegram from Benares. Found a great job here. Really doing well. Where was his renunciation, you see? It was insincere. It fell down in the meek, first 3 meek levels of detachment, didn't it? Not the higher, middling, or intense levels of detachment. So I'm just saying all these things not to criticize or not to bring negativity into it, just to point out that this is a very rare attainment where a person gets a true desire to be free. This means freedom from form. Like I say, you're going to practice death, you're going to cut time out of the picture, you're going to renounce space, ethers, and you're going to sing like Shankara, Na mrityur na shanka, na me jati beda, pita naiva me naiva, mata ma janmaha. I have no death, mature, because I was never born. I have no father and no mother. Na mata, na pita. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham Om Chidananda Rupaha. Rupa, I am the very form of Chid, consciousness. Shivoham Shivoham, I am Shiva. I am Shiva. He lived to 32 years of age and changed the face of the world in a short time with the Advaita Vedanta after Buddhism had become to an end of its decline, about 700 AD. Buddha was born 550 BC, so there was about 1,000, 1,200 years there in India where Buddhism was really having its heyday. But then every religion has a decline. That's what that says on that picture on the wall. All dharmas have their decline. Then from age to age I have to come back again, embody myself forth to resurrect them. Well, there are certain pillars in these dharmas that stay the same even when the dharma declines. That is, men fall out of dharma. Dharma doesn't fall out of dharma. This is called sanatana dharma. Sanatana means... How'd you know that?
Just a lucky guess.
This man's named Sanatana. So, yes, it means eternal. And it refers to your soul, yes, but it also refers to every other damn thing. Everything is eternal. Nature is eternal. It's just that when it disappears, it becomes the formless eternal. Nothing is born and nothing dies. That's what we just sang, right? So that applies to everything. Nature, God, you, your ancestors. They just go into a formless state, come back again. Great-grandfather turns into your baby. So this is constantly going on in cycles. It's a matter of, number one, do I want off these cycles? Because a merry-go-round can make you sick after a while. It's fun at first. Then you get a little nauseous, you say, I want off, you see. Or number two, can I master the cycles? Master the cycles, you see. In order to do that, I'm going to have to gain mumukshutvam. I'm going to have to make sure my desire for freedom is unalloyed, uninterrupted. And it has to be based on the attainment of the 6 jewels and the 2 V's, which are the 2 D's. Viveka Vairagya, which means discrimination and detachment. So this is a Vedantic practice, if such a term could be allowed in Vedanta. This is what you do in your mind. If you have this all together, then you have the perfect mental, intellectual practice. You can live in that desire to be free until she, the Divine Mother of the universe, comes along and gives you moksha. After you've done the right thing, she'll give you moksha. She grants moksha. So here we have reached the end of our time. At the next class, which is the Sunday after next, remember next Sunday is a break for Christmas, but then we start into Shakta Advaita Vada, which means all the inner parts of this chart plus the lower parts. Now that we've taken the pillars and what surrounds her, we will take all of these other aspects in what's called Shakta Advaita Vada Part 2, which I think is about 5 classes. So the whole series will be some 8 or 9 classes long when we finally get it on YouTube for all of you to see, to look back on. But in the meantime, you've been here present for the immediate transmission of this, so I applaud you all. I'll give you a t-shirt. I survived Babaji's class in Vedanta, and we will go home with all of this in the hopper, you see. As I said, inundation method, and squeeze out of the mind what isn't applicable to you at this moment, and retain what is, make that the core essence of your life, and you will be living in the Dharma. So here, let's end with a chant. Om Tachnayo, Om Tachnayo Ravrini Mahe, Gatong Yagyaya, Gatong Ye Nupataye, Daivi Swastarastu Naha, Swastir Manusebhyaha, Urdhvam jagatu bhesajam sangno astu dvipade sangjatushpate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we offer all into the Great Self. May we always delight in this offering. May we always revere the Lord and Mother of all sacrifices. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace come into the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity also then abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.